You ever noticed how something happens halfway across the world and suddenly your gas bill or your grocery receipt just goes up? Well, we're about to connect those dots in a really big way. Okay, let's dive right in. So here's the big question, right? How can one tiny little strip of water become a ticking time bomb for the entire global economy? We're going to break down exactly how this narrow passage has become a massive fuse, just waiting to set off a worldwide shockwave.
All right, first things first. To really get a grip on the financial threat, you gotta understand the map. We're going right to the epicenter of this whole thing, a place you've probably heard of but maybe didn't realize just how critical it is to your day-to-day life.
Let's start with a pretty staggering number, 20%. You heard that right. 1/5 of all the oil the entire planet burns through every single day has to squeeze through this one spot. We're talking 20 million barrels of oil, not to mention a third of the world's natural gas that travels by sea. Now, here's where it gets kind of crazy, the vulnerability. At its narrowest, this choke point is only 21 miles wide. Think about that. That is an insanely small bottleneck for such a colossal, vital flow of global energy. I mean, that is a recipe for disruption. And this is the place we're talking about, the Strait of Hormuz. It's the one and only way for huge tankers to get oil and natural gas out of the Persian Gulf and into the open ocean. So the bottom line is, if you control this little stretch of water, you basically have your hand on the faucet for a huge chunk of the world's energy supply. So how did we get to this point? Well, according to the scenario in our source material, it all kicked off in February 2026 with military strikes. In response, Iran decided to shut the strait down, but not with a physical blockade. No, it's more subtle. They've just made it so incredibly dangerous and expensive to get insurance that commercial ships have stopped coming through. The traffic has ground to a halt. And just like that, the fuse is lit. All right, let's track that first shockwave as it hits. And it hits right where it hurts the most. Energy prices. This is that moment when a distant global crisis suddenly feels very, very personal. And wow, just look at this impact. I mean, it's pretty simple math, right? You take 20% of the world's oil supply off the market overnight, and prices don't just creep up, they explode. Analysts are projecting that if this shutdown drags on, oil could rocket from a stable $85 a barrel to a painful $150. And let's be crystal clear here. That number on the screen isn't some abstract figure for Wall Street. Nope. That's the price you're going to see at the pump when you fill up your car. That's the number on your bill to heat your home. This is the first, most direct hit to your wallet. But hold on, because the problem is about to get a whole lot bigger. That initial shock to energy prices is threatening to unleash a much more dangerous economic monster, one that goes way, way beyond the gas station.
And that monster has a name: stagflation. Yeah, if that word sends a little shiver down your spine, it should. We've seen it before. Think of the economic misery of the 1970s oil crisis. That was stagflation. It's this absolutely toxic cocktail of high inflation, meaning everything gets more expensive, happening at the exact same time as a stagnant economy. It is, quite literally, the worst of both worlds.
So what does that actually feel like for you? Well, look at your savings. With inflation running hot, the cash you have is losing its buying power faster and faster every day. At the same time, look at loans. To fight that inflation, central banks have to keep interest rates painfully high. And that means the cost of getting a mortgage or a car loan stays brutal. And the ripple effects just keep spreading. See, this isn't just an energy crisis anymore. It's now a full-blown logistics crisis. And that is about to show up in the price of pretty much everything you buy. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed, all those massive container ships can't take the direct route. They're now being forced to take the long, long way around. An incredibly long and expensive detour all the way around Africa. And this slide just shows you what a nightmare that is. This new route adds weeks to shipping times. It burns a massive amount of extra fuel, which you'll remember is now way more expensive, and it creates brutal traffic jams at ports that were never designed to handle this sudden rerouting of global trade. It's a mess. And it's not just oil and electronics getting stuck. Take a look at this. Nearly 20% of all the world's fertilizer that's shipped by sea has to get through that same choke point. When those shipments get trapped, farming costs around the globe skyrocket, and that cost gets passed directly to you at the grocery store. So the end result of all this logistical chaos is what amounts to a hidden tax on everything. Every single item that needs to be shipped, from the food on your table to the phone in your pocket, is going to cost more and it's going to take longer to arrive. Okay, so that's the problem. And yeah, it's big, it's global, and it's frankly pretty scary. But it is not hopeless. So let's shift gears now and talk about an achievable action plan for how you can protect yourself from the financial fallout. The first and most critical piece of advice is this: do not panic. When the markets get volatile and start freaking out over a geopolitical shock, the single worst thing you can possibly do is make a rash, emotional decision with your long-term investments. And there's a powerful reason for that advice. History is on your side here. While markets will absolutely react and take a hit in the short term, they're also surprisingly resilient. Historically, they tend to recover from these kinds of shocks within about a year. Sticking to your long-term plan is very often the best plan. So, here are 3 core survival tips. First, be really wary of holding too much cash. In a high-inflation world, cash that's just sitting there is like a melting ice cube. Its purchasing power is just dripping away. Second, brace your budget. You have to anticipate that essentials like fuel and food are going to take a much bigger bite out of your paycheck. And third, remember what a diversified portfolio is for. It has built-in buffers. While the overall market might dip, some sectors, like energy companies, could actually do pretty well in this scenario.
And that really brings us to our final thought. This crisis is a powerful, potent reminder of just how interconnected our world really is, and how vulnerable our personal finances can be to events happening on the other side of the planet. So the question we'll leave you with is this: in a world like this, how prepared is your financial plan for the next global shock?